This is episode 40. In episode 39, we had finished chapter 7 and today we will start chapter 8. Chapter 8 is Akshara Brahma Yoga or Yoga of Imperishable Absolute or Yoga of the Indestructible Eternal. This chapter has 28 verses and today we will cover verses 1 to 10. So let's start with the verses first and then I will talk about some interesting things. Verse 1 is Arjuna Uvach Kim Tad Brahma Kim Adhyatmam Kim Karm Purushottam Adhibhutam Cha Kim Proktam Adhidaivam Kim Uchyate. Arjuna says, O Krishna, tell me what is Brahma, what is Adhyatma, and what is Karma. Also tell me what is Adhibhuta and who is said to be Adhidaiva. So this is verse 1. And then in verse 2, Arjuna continues to ask questions. In verse 2, he says, Adhiyajna katham ko atra dehe asminam madhusudan prayana kale cha katham geyovasi niyat atmabhi. Arjuna says, O Krishna, what is Adhiyajna that is present in the body? And during the time of death, how would I know those of steadfast mind? How do I know that? Prayana kale means last minute or time of death. Then coming to verse 3, Shri Bhagwan Uvach Aksharam Brahma Paramam Subhavo Adhyatmam Uchyate Bhoot Bhav Udbhav Karo Visarga Karm Sangita. God says, the supreme, indestructible or eternal is Brahma. And the form and realization of Brahma is called Adhyatma. Actions which create, persevere and destroy living beings are called karma. These actions originate from Om. So this is verse 3. Then verse 4 is Adhibhutam Ksharo Bhava Purushascha Adhidaivatam Adhiyajyo Aham Eva Atra Dehe Dehibhritam Vara. God says Adhibhut is the destructible form or the physical existence. Adhidaiva is Purush or my manifestation. Adhiyajna is the soul inside the body. So this is verse 4. Then verse 5 is Antkale cha mamev smaran muktva kalevaram Yah prayati sa madbhavam yati na asti atra sanshaya. God says, those who remember me at the last moment will come to me. There is certainly no doubt about this. Then verse 6 says, Yam yam va api smaran bhavam tejati ante kalevaram tam tam ev eti konteya sada tat bhava bhavita. God says that one who remembers me at the time of giving up the body attains me and realizes my form. Then verse 7 is Tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anusmar yuddhicha mai arpita manah buddhi mam ev eshasi asanshayah. God says, one who always remembers me and is performing action while doing so and whose mind and intellect are focused on me, such a person will definitely attain me without any doubt. God says, surrender to me thy mind and thy understanding, and then without doubt you shall come to me. So this is verse 7 and verse 8 is Abhyas yog yuktena chetsa na anye gamina paramam purusham divyam yati parth anuchintayan. God says, O Parth, one whose mind is stabilized in yoga and who is focused on me, that is the eternal, attains me by constantly engaging and persevering. So one who is constantly engaging and persevering and whose mind is stabilized and focused on me without getting distracted will definitely attain me. Next, I will read verses 9 and 10 together. Kavim Puranam Anushasitaram Anoh Aniyanasam Anusmaret Yah Sarvasya Dhataram Achinte Rupam Aditya Varnam Tamsah Parastat Bhaktya Yukto Yog Balena Chaiv Bhruvor Madhe Pranam Aveshya Samyak Sa Tam Param Purusham Upati Divyam. God says that one who is focused on the ancient, the omniscient, the ruler of everything, that which is smaller than an atom, that provides for everyone, attains the form of an unimaginable refulgent sun that is beyond darkness. One who is focused on the eternal that is ancient, omniscient, all-ruling, smaller than an atom, provider for all, attains the form of an unimaginable refulgent sun. And the one who at the time of death is focused on the eternal with devotion and an unmoving mind and fixes the prana, which is life air, between the eyebrows by practicing yoga, attains the supreme divine spirit. So this is verse 10, and these were the literal translations. Now I will talk about some explanations and interesting things about these verses. I think these verses are a bit complicated and may seem confusing, but actually these verses are straightforward and mention the same topics that we have been discussing in all our past episodes. First, it is important to know that Arjuna begins this chapter in verses 1 and 2, wherein he asks 7 questions from God. He asks, O Krishna, what is Brahma? Then he asks, what is Adhyatma? Then he asks, what is Karma? Then he asks, what is Adhibhuta, Adhidaiva, and Adhyajna? Finally, he asks, how do I know Stitpragya or Niyat Atma? So these are the 7 questions that Arjuna asks in these verses, and it's important to be clear about them. God answers all these questions. In verse 3, he answers what is Brahma, Adhyatma, and Karma. In verse 4, he answers what is Adhibhuta, Adhidaiva, and Adhyajna. And in verses 5 and 6, he answers the last question of how to determine the one with a steadfast mind during the time of death. Then in verses 7 to 10, he says, after knowing this, you should recite me and focus on me. And if you keep reciting me while performing actions with perseverance, you will attain me or reach unto me. This is being covered in verses 7, 8, 9, and 10. With this, let's understand the answers and their meaning as described by God. The first question that was asked to God was the meaning of Brahma. God says, the one who is supreme, indestructible, eternal, and unfathomable is Brahma. And he has described this form of himself in chapters 2 and 7 as well. His form of supreme eternal is Brahma. And that's what he describes in verse 3 as well. Then he says that the nature of Brahma is known as Adhyatma. So Adhyatma is its nature, and it means self-knowledge. So Brahma's nature is Adhyatma or self-knowledge. And let me simplify the meaning of self-knowledge. It is a state where you become a lot more knowledgeable and where your karma, dhyan, and jnana merge, thereby progressing you to a state of eternal happiness or bliss. Adi Shankar says, Chidananda Rupa Shivoham Shivoham. And that is the nature of Adhyatma as well as Brahma. God's manifestation is eternal happiness or eternal bliss. And that's what he is saying. Then he answers the meaning of karma. He says that actions that create, sustain, and destroy the entire universe as well as creatures are karma. And this karma originates from Om. So karma is action, and God is always in action because God is always creating, persevering, and destroying. That is what he is saying. Know karma as originating from Om, or the Big Bang through which this universe was created, is being sustained and eventually will be laid desolate. So he explains these 3 answers in verse 3. Then he explains the next 3 answers in verse 4. That is the meaning of Adhibhuta, Adhidaiva, and Adhyajna. He says Adhibhuta is the physical or material form, such as the earth, moon, planets, living beings on earth, plants, rock, water, etc. And its nature is perishable. So perishable things are a form of God or a manifestation of God. God says perishable is Adhibhuta and a form of mind. That is the 4th question. And then God explains the meaning of Adhidaiva. You would remember when we covered chapter 3 in previous episodes, we talked about devas and that they are smaller objectives. It is important to achieve these smaller objectives by performing action with yoga, because that's what teaches you perseverance, principles, rational discrimination, renunciation, controlling your senses, and how to renounce the fruits of actions. These smaller objectives are important to achieve, just as it's important for a child to learn to walk and for you to learn small pieces of Mozart before becoming a Mozart. These smaller objectives are called Adhidaiva, and these are steps on the path to God and therefore are manifestations of God. So that is the 5th answer. Then God says Adhyajna is the soul inside the body that is the recipient of all renunciation. The renunciation of the attachment of our senses to outcomes and fruits of action. Adhyajna is the recipient of this renunciation, the best soul inside the body. So Adhyajna is also God's manifestation because the recipient of renunciation is God, and hence God says that is me as well. This was the 6th question. And then the 7th question that Arjuna asks is during the time of death, how would I know who is Stitpragya? In verses 5 and 6, God says those who relinquish the body while remembering me at the moment of death will come to me. There is certainly no doubt about this. Then in verse 6, God says, the one who remembers me will be immersed in me. Effectively, God says to focus on me with belief, with yoga and renunciation. And if you keep remembering me with devotion, then you will attain me. Such a person is of steadfast mind, and he will attain the manifestation of Brahma, of eternal peace, which was also highlighted by Adi Shankar. So these are verses 5 and 6. And in verses 7 to 10, God is literally instructing Arjuna to focus on him, to do yoga with perseverance, to control his mind, so that he doesn't get attached to the fruits of action. So this is the essence of this chapter. Now, one interesting fact that I want to talk about is a Shah Rukh Khan movie called Om Shanti Om. There is a famous dialogue in the movie that goes like, इतनी शिद्दत से मैंने तुझे पाने की कोशिश की है कि हर जर्रे ने मुझे तुझसे मिलाने की साजिश की है. In other words, it means that I have wanted you with so much intensity that every particle, everything in this universe has conspired to help me achieve you or realize you. And this is what God implies when he asks Arjuna to focus on him during the time of death. He says that whatever you want to attain should be done with yoga, renunciation, and devotion of such high intensity that each particle of this universe can conspire or help you to achieve it. That's what I would say. I will end this episode here today. Hope you found this interesting.